Oh, yeah. We're doing this, folks. We're doing this. Because I am mathematically forced to, because if I did this next week, it would be a little weird. I don't think I did one of these last year in any shape or form. Last year's version of me was the loser. And I still am. We all know the drill here. Who's shone, who's let the side down, and which have, existed. For the purpose of the first 12 races, there is an element of fortune or lack thereof to consider for each placing too. And also to provide some sense of tension, I'm not including every single driver here. It's going to be the 5 biggest winners, the 5 biggest losers, and the 5 most, okay. Oscar Piastri starts off the list, and I already sense that you might be calling me out for bias because he's my boy. But if you're leading the championship into the second half of the season in only your 3rd season of F1, that is a pretty big achievement. Look, even if Oscar doesn't win this year, his first World Championship, at least he gave it a good old college try. This is something that he can easily be proud of after him just crossing the 50 Grand Prix barrier. This is something to still be really proud of, what he's been able to do. Almost touching upon records within McLaren that were worthy of Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. Now, of course, the illusion that we got regarding calmness, precision at all times has been wobbly a bit the last few races, but nevertheless, this is a kind of person who does very much have the instinct in being a very discreet and calm world champion. I would say very much, especially with his unassuming nature, he will maybe go on to emulate champions like Prost indeed, maybe Jim Clark, because I could easily imagine that Oscar's not the kind of person who would want to go out to parties. He would just like to keep himself to himself, ideally. I would certainly say that 2025 has been the season where we have started to see what the article of Oscar Piastri will be going forward. There will be more refining as experience comes on, but I still think that Oscar Piastri that we see now will be the Oscar Piastri that we'll see in 10 years' time. And with so many wins to his name, he's on the cusp of breaking Daniel Ricciardo's record, the most recent Australian heartthrob and mainstay in terms of talent. Still, there are so many things to be proud of for this kid. And also performances which make it very simple to call him a winner. I don't really need to say much more because we need to move on to the next winner, and that is definitely George Russell. Because it's quite clear that George was gagging to become the team leader of Mercedes with a car that could, mostly, do what he wanted it to do. And I would certainly say that his dragging his failing W16 around Bahrain as it was begging to be put out of its misery, fending off a recovering Norris to boot, that's been one of the standout drives of the year. Now, of course, he's not going to be going after the championship this year. He is very much behind Lando and Oscar at this point. Max is quite close to him. That's probably his target this year. Sure, it is still susceptible at times to high temperatures in all regards at various departments of the machine, but nevertheless, it still has picked up in terms of outright pace, which was something lacking with the W15. With George at the top of driver development side of things, it's all come good. That maybe Mercedes can finish this regulation cycle on a good note, to get some closure perhaps. With Mercedes and George, it's trending upwards, albeit rather jaggedly. We are seeing the best of this man right now, and I really want to see him near the front-running track for a good few more years. I do think there might be a world championship in him. And it would be a crime if all of that was to be potentially taken away with him because Toto, like Papa Stroll, like shiny objects. Maybe that's why they're good friends. And you might call this next one recency bias, but that podium, man. Sauber's first in almost 13 years, Nico's first ever? That alone is deserving of being called a winner. A long time coming. But the reason why I have chosen Nico above other drivers who might be deserving of the winner's accolade is simply because of what he's been able to do with Sauber after just a few short months. Because I remember last year when it was confirmed he would be going to Sauber, many people thought, well, that's that then. And there have been many other examples throughout the first half of 2025 which proved that this guy is very much deserving of remaining in Formula 1, that he's still got plenty to offer. And he said so in interviews after his P3 at Silverstone that he knew he had more left in the tank. It was just a matter of unlocking it and showing it to the world in a meaningful way instead of just saying it. You're doing stuff, which is very much what Nico has been doing. Doing stuff. Burns from the stern. You've only got to look at the standings and you go, wow, Nico's almost got 40 points? In a Sauber? Yeah. And with him bringing good times to Sauber, it makes you think that Hulkenberg brings as much to a team as Carlos Sainz has historically done, that he comes to a team, he does his part, and he leaves them in a better condition, albeit not quite as spectacularly as it has been with Carlos. But seriously, we all talk about Alex Albon having a stellar season. Don't worry, he is coming up next. But Nico, come on. This is probably one of the feel-good stories of the year, if not the most feelingist of goodest. Because with Nico as the de facto leader with his rookie sidekick, this has proven to be a remarkable lineup with a team which is really going places. They finally got leadership, which isn't all about trying to grasp power from Germany. No, they're all unified under one goal. Make sure Audi's debut season gets off to a good start. Although I would personally argue that 2025 has been Audi's first season because, well, they own the Sauber name outright. This is just them getting to grips with things, albeit with a different badge. That's what I say, and I'm sticking to it. So, yeah, more please, Nico, because we believe that you can do more. And of course, Alex deserves kudos here too. Granted, a podium hasn't come his way in 2025, unlike Hulkenberg, but he has plenty of standout performances to be proud of, including some top 5 finishes to be happy about. I also recall his Miami comments where he was salivating, licking his lips at the prospect of maybe challenging for a podium if things went his way between Russell and Verstappen. He could actually see them in front of him, and no, he hadn't just been lapped. He was on the same lap. This was fighting potentially for position, and for Alex, that meant the world to him. Yes, Carlos has been very much embattled with many misfortunes for his team, and Alex has had to wait the clock for 3 good years, many people questioning whether he was right for Formula 1, could he actually provide Williams enough, and then after what Colapinto was able to do in his tenure with Williams, is Alex a fraud? Yeah, I got convinced by that, but this year, no. This has been a winning year for Alex because he's proven many of the doubters wrong. Because that prospect of a podium, the last time that Alex had that was back at Red Bull 5 years ago. And sure, he's had his fair share of poor reliability, 3 power unit related DNFs in a row, and he has been banging his head against a wall still regarding team communication. But this has been the perfect response to many people saying that he wasn't cut out for the job. The Thai driver's making his move. He's answered many questions and now he can get onto the business of starting to score even more points and maybe getting some more podiums. Or maybe, if Williams completely nail it, they might be able to make Toto regret his decisions even more in providing other teams' power units. Because Wolf has actually come out saying, yes, me giving McLaren Mercedes power units wasn't the most intelligent of calls. And then he was also saying, putting Kimi in the car and Monza FP1, that wasn't the most intelligent of calls. Yeah, Toto, you don't very much make intelligent calls recently, do you, buddy? But hey, accepting Alex ultimately, albeit with major concessions and him cutting off Red Bull entirely, that's probably one of your more intelligent calls in actually going along with it. Because look at Williams right now. And in regards to him responding to James Vowell's Spanish heartthrob, I think Alex has responded maturely. There's been no drama yet, and he's managed to bring home some good points. That's a good win for Williams. Now, you might be a little bit dubious with this next take. You might be getting your foams at the ready. But considering how I perceived this particular rookie at the beginning of the year, and to where he is right now, I absolutely have to eat my own words because Isack Hadjar, yeah, he is a winner here. Because if you haven't watched Formula 2, many people had little or no opinion of Isack Hadjar, but look where we are just a few months later. Not only has he actually proven his worth in terms of scoring Racing Bull's valuable points in the Constructors effort, because they are still in it, albeit slipping a little bit, 6th place in the Constructors, which would be fan-dabby-dozy, but he's also managed to gain the hearts of millions, simply for just being Isack. After his headline-grabbing moment in Melbourne, he manages to net over 20 points in a midfield machine. And people give a damn about him. No, they adore him. He's got character, potential in spades, a definite beacon of hope for Formula 1, Red Bull, and also plenty of gossip and drama, which will very much please Liberty Media, in the midst of Max Verstappen maybe forsaking that particular team. Red Bull have got a rather feisty and tenacious youngster with growing appeal and charisma. So maybe if Laurent Mekies can recognise this might be the beginning of a fruitful working relationship at the senior team in the next year or two. It really depends on how Red Bull goes forward. Maybe next year, ideally, they keep the same lineup in both teams for stability and continuity, real stability and continuity, and then 2027 you go from there. We'll just have to see where the potato chips lie, because one thing's for sure, Laurent the new team principal of the top team, understands Isaac's abilities completely as a rookie, and if it means that they have to promote him and then Yuki stays next year, Max goes elsewhere, having Isaac and Yuki back together at the main team, that would be a very much big reunion that many people were loving in their first few races at Racing Bulls. Yeah, okay, he has had a fair share of mistakes, and Liam has shown him up a couple of times this year, but nevertheless, where he was at the beginning of the year to where he is right now, it's only been upwards. It's been quite smooth. He's been quite consistent at points, getting some very good results for a team that many people thought at the beginning of the year wouldn't really be scoring that much. I don't think anyone's questioning his suitability for F1 anymore. Now, okay, I'm gonna have to make a new category for this particular driver because I just simply couldn't make up my mind. I didn't really think he done enough to become a full-blown winner, but nor did I think he was deserving of nothing because there had been a decent rebound in recent races. So in the end, I would have to describe the first half of 2025 for him as solid. So it's above meh, but below winners, so it's in its own space. Okay, you might call this a cop-out in me not being able to make up my mind and having to shoehorn him into something else, but look, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon and call Lando an absolute loser after what he's been able to do in the first half of the year, because he's not. He's still within single figures of Oscar Piastri when all is said and done. The only reason I can't call him a winner is because had he not had those really big high-profile gaffes, he probably would be comfortably ahead of the Australian, and therefore really dictating where McLaren goes, making their, stressful situation, well, much easier to deal with, or maybe non-existent. He has learned from the school of Max Verstappen in some ways in just keeping going, keeping his head down, and ignoring what the media says, and what has that resulted in? Well, look where we are right now. It's all still to play for, and the momentum as of now is coming back to him after all. We all, myself included, worry he had lost the room in McLaren, but if he could just get some more wins and solid performances, like we saw in Austria and Silverstone, the team are not going to be abandoning him or leaving him to his doom. That has worked out for him, and that should be a godsend for the second half. Yes, we have seen some very good performances and dominant wins, like in Australia, Austria, and him being very much picking up the pieces of Piastri at Silverstone, which is crucial in a championship battle, being able to steal up your resolve. But then again, there have been moments where you can easily describe Lando making his job a lot harder than it needs to be. What happened in Jeddah, what happened in Bahrain by the false start and dropping even more places, and then of course Montreal, giving points away to Oscar, and again, making this challenge a little bit more challenging. But in the end, he's come back to the party, and that is all people were asking of him, just to come back fighting and give us a show. Well, I think Lando's done just that. But I wouldn't call this show a very, very clean one. It's been very rough. I do think, though, it might go all the way to the end. Now we get to the meh section, and wait, Law, you said Kimi was doing great yesterday. What's with the meh rating? Well, I'm not going to be calling him a loser, that's for damn sure, because in my mind, Kimi has done nothing wrong as a rookie in terms of its application to the task at hand. Because as I said in my video yesterday, the technical team of Mercedes like him, the fans like him, and his teammate George Russell likes him. No one's got a bad word to say about the young Italian. He's applied himself admirably in my honest opinion, and he is fully accepting that the first half of the season has not been ideal. The reason why I'm not going to call him a loser is because you've got to look at all of the results he's been able to manifest. 63 points in his debut season is still something not to be sniffed at. It's not that far away from Oscar Piastri's tally. Sure, you might be arguing, well, Oscar had an absolute tractor for the first half of the season, whereas Kimi has had a fairly solid machine so far and will continue to do so. That is perfectly valid, but points mean prizes at the end of the day, and you've got to be in it to win it. And McLaren were very much not in it at the beginning of the year through necessity. And I'm not just going to mention sprint pole in Miami or the podium in Canada. We've all talked about that already. There have been many other standout performances which have really shown Kimi acts more maturely than his age gives him credit for. You've only got to look back at the Melbourne result of him getting P4 at a track and Grand Prix where all the other rookies were fighting for their lives or not even finishing the race. Then you get Kimi not that far away from a podium. And also, fortune has not really been on the Italian side, with him bearing the brunt of the W16's fragility, whereas George Russell, he has finished every single race, whereas Kimi has had his own fair share of mechanical maladies, but he finds himself in a precarious place right now that you'd be thinking that the team would be having all the patience in the world for the successor to Lewis Hamilton, and I would still call his first half of the season as okay, and I would say, well, I don't think his place in Formula One is going to be in jeopardy or going to be sent into a state of flux. Well, if anything is to go by with where the news headlines are going, that's exactly where it's going to go. Because now there are rumours that are starting to grow at a pace. I thought it was just a theory, where he could be carted off to another team to learn away from the main team. So that means Max Verstappen can come in because shiny object. And considering that he would have started off with top-notch technical staff and very other highly regarded personnel at Mercedes, and then goes to Alpine of all places, that is a major climb down, and Kimi being used as a bargaining chip. Now, okay, I'm digressing. We're talking about the actual results. Again, 63 points in 12 races is still a very good tally, and there are 12 more races to go. If Mercedes can provide him a more reliable car and give him the assurances that his job is not at risk, give him as very few reasons to be sad as possible, then we could see a transformation, and I could easily see him breaking the 100-point barrier. And then Charles Leclerc is a meh. His season's been a case study in frustration. He's in the top 5 and consistently ahead of Hamilton so far, yet Ferrari still hasn't won a race. And while he's the only one bringing home podiums, overdriving and tactical misfires, they do continue to haunt him. Especially in wet conditions where he was borderline anonymous, save for going across the grass a couple of times. There's not really much else to say about Charles. He's just in the middle of an internal power struggle as to where Ferrari goes into 2026. Is he still the golden boy of Ferrari, or are the teams starting to look toward Lewis and taking him more seriously? It's an uncertainty, an unknown that the Monegasque surely doesn't like. Time is ticking for him, and I'm not sure whether his patience will last out. It really depends whether or not the suspension tweak that Ferrari tested out in Mugello recently means that they definitely are able to go for more podiums and maybe a win or two. And then indeed we move to Lewis, and you might argue that he is a loser, but the dream move to the Scuderia came up short. I would disagree. In terms of points scored, he is only a few points behind where he was in round 12 last year, and had it not been for 2024's Silverstone win, his Ferrari debut year would actually have provided more points. It's been more consistent, more chances of top 5, maybe P6 finishes than it was with the W15. But equally, it wasn't the ideal start that he may have wanted, in that he gets to sip champagne other than his sprint win in China or something. It's not been a first half of the season which has emulated Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, his former rivals and buddies, where they could win either on debut for Ferrari or within a couple of races. No, that dream and opportunity is gone. It's going to be very much its own thing. And it would be especially galling considering what the SF24 was able to do last year, where it could easily be in contention for wins on a regular basis, even with a mid-season slump. That mid-season slump would have provided Lewis hope that, yeah, if Ferrari get themselves in a bit of a rut, they can quickly get themselves back out again. However, you can easily start to see that Lewis's endgame solidity is very much still there. And if Ferrari can actually tailor this car and Lewis is able to adapt to the Ferrari model of doing things, then we might start to see more P4s, more P5s, more consistent top 5 finishes, and maybe breaking in for a few P3s along the way. I don't think wins are going to be coming Lewis's way this year. It would be very difficult for Charles to be able to do that. The truth is, though, is that it's been very much a difficult start. Full of miscommunication, frustrations that he thought left behind at Mercedes. It's not been great, and it's surely dented Lewis's confidence, but you do start to sense that they are starting to take him more seriously, and there is an opportunity for him to wrestle control from Charles, albeit in the back rooms instead of on the track. It's going to be a lot more discreet where he goes from here, but I would still call him, I wouldn't call him a loser. He's certainly been able to show something. And then we got Max Verstappen. Let's be real, Max wouldn't call himself a winner here at all. Winning only twice after doing nothing but winning the last few years, that's a climb down in of itself, and not something he's pleased with. And despite that though, the fact he could get anything out of a very inadequate RB21, that's an achievement too. I think it's proven that Max is definitely a generational talent without question. And also in the midst of all of his struggles, I'm starting to sense a shift in terms of the overall general perception of him amongst the average Formula 1 fan. Because when I went to the British Grand Prix for qualifying, and when Max took a surprise pole in the UK, it was nothing like it was at the beginning of the year. They clapped him. They clapped him when he got pole. When he got the win at Imola, there were applause, people cheering him, people chanting, doing the do thing. No, that was a mark of respect for a champion. Sure, very much a beleaguered champion, but it very much established that the achievements of the past were acknowledged and they would be continued to be acknowledged. So you could call that a little win for Max in of itself, that people might start to get off his back a little bit. But that's not the main thing that Max wants this year. He wants to know that the team he's at right now, going into the second half, will be having his back and actually listening to him. The team is fourth in the constructors and are only now just getting over the turmoil laid out by Horner, now that he's been purged from the job. There might be some opportunities to regenerate in a more technically minded operation, instead of one built on Discord and media hype, but it's very much a question mark for another video. Then there's Esteban Ocon. A switch that has looked like career limbo. Going from one midfield team to another, people kind of wrote him off, were keen to forget him, he was just no longer in the zeitgeist. But the truth of the matter is, though, is that Esteban has far more points than Pierre does, and he's actually equalled his tally from last year already. Only 12 races in, at Haas. Not bad. You also notice that Esteban is so much happier. You got the sense of that at Goodwood, the vlog coming out tomorrow, by the way, that he and Oliver were in a good place, where they could have fun, where they could have jollies and shenanigans with just finding out who could shred a set of wet tyres the most. That indicates to me a person who's very content with their lot, even though, admittedly, why they're a meh, that the ceiling of Haas right now does not mirror that of Ocon's. I don't think he's going to be getting a podium this year. It's very much going to be Haas trying to bag themselves more P7s, P8s, maybe a top 5 if they're lucky. But that is something to give him credit for. That P5 in China, fantastic stuff. There are plenty of opportunities to be had for Esteban. It's just they are going to be few and far between. But I don't think he cares right now. But yeah, he's no loser. A loser indeed is Ben Lawson. He began the year as Verstappen's teammate and then shunted to racing balls after 2 pointless outings near the back. Yeah, I call that automatic loser credentials. Granted, he has regained confidence at a team which has his back in racing balls. He has got new personal best finishes in the top 10, with his Austria efforts being thoroughly appreciated, especially because he was the highest scoring Red Bull driver that weekend. And he has got 12 points. He is now in double figures, but he still trails Isack Hadjar by that little bit. But there may be some opportunity for him to catch up in the second half. I do think the momentum is slowly coming back toward him, because we very much mullered around Silverstone. He was just a passenger there. But the fact of the matter is, though, is that Red Bull, where they are right now, is still a bit of a question mark. Arvid Lindblad is still knocking around in F2. Those questions are not going to be entirely going away. The first half of the year has been brutal. No questions there. He was brought up to Red Bull far too early, the earliest out of any previous Red Bull junior, and the results showed it. And they started to regret it, but nevertheless, the damage was done. It's been a year full of hardship, reality checks, and him not having that many friends. And no, I don't feel like making the quip today. You do it in the comments. Go on. And then there's Yuki Tsunoda. I don't really need to say much else about him that I haven't said about Liam, albeit it's been a bit more protracted. In fact, you could arguably say that it's been even more tragic for Yuki than it was with Liam. For Liam, it was a slap in the face, but for Yuki, it wasn't just a slap in the face. It was continual slaps in the faces, and then him even just questioning his own existence. He thought that he had the understanding of the RB21, and then realised, oh no, he had no clue whatsoever. That the team really didn't have his back properly, and had Horner continued in the job, I wouldn't be surprised that they would have reneged on their promises of no more driver swaps in 2025 and just got rid of them towards season's end. If Honda got mad at them, oh, what would it matter? You know, they're going to be going away to Aston Martin anyway, let's just give it a go with Isack, eh? Well, that's not going to happen, my friend. The only saving grace now going forward is that he's got a very friendly face in that of Laura Mecki's the new team principal. Even Helmut Marko has cooled his jets a bit toward the Japanese driver. In fact, actually being quite benevolent and supportive and patient and kind. But yeah, the points in Yuki's name at Red Bull Racing, far too few to be comfortable with. Again, unfortunately, a loser. And then Carlos Sainz is one too. So much for my revenge arc then, ha ha ha, yeah I get it, but sometimes arcs like this have very low lows, and that's what makes the highs all the more satisfying. But nevertheless, Williams were probably not expecting to be this juicy already to make this even more profound. You know, since James noted that they were very much going for the low-hanging fruit at the beginning of the year to maybe make Williams not last place. Well, they're not last place. They are very much in 5th place. Albeit their advantage to Sauber now in 6th. Remember, Sauber, 6th. last time we saw that was back in 2022, that is still a bit of a wake-up call and a reality check, maybe. And if it does continue to fall away again, even though Williams are promising a small update for Spa, I don't know how small it's going to be, but you never know, Sainz may not have a leg to stand on and may have no opportunities to score big points like Alex was able to do at the beginning of the year. It might be too little too late for Carlos to be able to rebound. But it is going to be the promise of James to focus on the Spanish driver a little bit more to provide him a little bit more of a lift, because this first half of the season has very much been defined by lost opportunities, and that everything that could go wrong has. Indeed, it has been. Full of reliability issues, unfortunate circumstances and placements in Q1 which sees him being eliminated, not a full understanding, a consistent understanding of the car, and far too many instances where there is damage given to his car through no fault of his own, or maybe examples of the team going over the radio, "Hey, Carlos, buddy, you mind giving Alex a bit of a solid here? He kind of needs your help. Oh, will you? Oh, thank you." And, yeah, having to play second fiddle sometimes. Yeah, I don't think he wants to be the butt monkey of Williams here, matey boy. I think he wants to be equal number one with Alex, because right now, I think he feels like he's the number two. Growing pains have been rife for this team, and Carlos has had to bear most of them. Aston Martin's early season optimism has dissolved into just 16 points for the Spaniard, and radio rants up the wazoo, with him going pointless for longer than he would have liked to, and a streak of poor results that were worthy of his McLaren days the second time around, or even his Minardi rookie year. Now, of course, Fernando has insisted that this slump is different to what it was at McLaren because, well, Adrian Newey's right there. He can see the light at the end of the tunnel, whereas at McLaren, there wasn't really that much light to be had, even in 2018, when Zach Brown was starting to get his act together, Seidel was coming in, and Norris was coming in. Maybe there could be something for next year, because Fernando has said that he will walk at the end of 2026 if Aston Martin don't provide some sense of improvement, or at least the hope of improvement. Because remember, Aston Martin, Honda, they can improve the engine over time. It's not frozen anymore after 2025. So the majority of the reason why he's in the loser category right now is for that really bad first stint before the Imola upgrade, because after the Imola upgrade, Fernando has begun to consistently score points. He would have overtaken Lance Stroll had it not been for his car bugging out on him around Monaco when it looked like he was going to be getting 8 points to his name. Yeah, Fernando does have harsh things to say about the team, but then he does add the caveat saying, "Because I know you can do better. I believe in you people. Let's do better together." Whereas Lance Stroll has harsh things to say. That's the end of the sentence. And for anyone in an Alpine, I would describe it as a sentence of a prison kind. And yeah, I can understand why you'd quibble this because, "Law, that's 3 drivers in one, stupid." But right now, it feels like a collective over there, because they're all in the same boat for different reasons. The team sits last with 19 points, all from Pierre, by the way, while rookies Colapinto and early season stand-in Doohan have failed to trouble the scorers at all, despite trying their damnedest, both men being no slowpokes, by the way, in their junior careers. You look back to pre-season testing, where Alpine looked not exactly fast, but looked okay, certainly better where they were in pre-season testing in 2024, and you just go, what the hell happened? I thought they were actually going to be good, or at least okay, scoring points fairly regularly, but with Pierre's comments of P6 feeling like a podium, that's pretty telling. And Briatore's been really flaky as to his estimation of Pierre, sometimes thinking he's really great, sometimes he thinks he's a loser, and there's no telling that the Mercedes gamble next year will actually benefit them in a meaningful manner where they're back to where they were a few years ago, 4th and 5th. The A525 is draggy, slow, fragile. Franco's been denied rebounding efforts thanks to persistent problems with the drive shaft. Doohan also was not quite sure where he was. You just get the sense that everything there is just noise, as Gasly described with more drivers being moved around, and that they should focus on next year and then maybe try and avoid the team's worst finish in their entire existence since back when they were Tolman. 2016 for Renault was terrible, but at least they were 9th. They weren't last or 10th. The last time that happened was back over 40 years ago. Clearly, Alpine's dragging themselves through the mud, as is indeed Kimi, with him probably being carted off to said team to make way for Max if Toto maybe has his way. To find out why this story's gotten sudden traction and why I think it's absolutely unfair, probably even more unfair than with George, watch this video next, straight after this one.